just annoying. Okay. Stop transcription. Here we go. Very good. And do the presentation here. Somebody let me know if we're looking good, please.
We got you. Looks great.
Yep.
Oh, okay, thanks, guys. All right, and I'm just joining on my phone here. It's a little trick I found where I can kind of see what's going on the side. All right, so today we're going to talk about again. Thanks for joining it. We're going to be talking about pathways to get you 401 qualified, and I'm just going to go ahead and start with the disclaimers right now that this is as best as we can tell. This does come from a point of experience. This is something that I'd be curious what other people's experiences are. I have been helping people get 401 qualified for a number of years now. My position when I was a forest fuels officer on the Cleveland, I can think of, I don't know, half a dozen or so people that helped go through this process and in different ways. So I do have a little bit of experience with it. One of the things that I found when building this presentation over the last week or so was I had to check some of my own assumptions, kind of re-educate myself on some of the details and sort of update some of the things that I had been operating on that were a little bit old, or outdated, I should say. So I believe I brought up my own information to what is current. That being said, I'll just say it right now, I was stunned at how complicated it is, and especially now with some of the divisions between the DOI and the Forest Service. And yeah, so we'll just kind of work our way through it. It's one of these things that like seems pretty simple, but when you really start looking at all the documentation that's associated with it, it gets pretty intense. I'll talk about this later, but in the chat file or in the files here on Teams, there is a zip file called, I think it's like called 401 documents. There's about 10 or 12 documents in there that pertain to the conversation, and some of them are like policy documents. One of them is this Excel spreadsheet that I have just to kind of help you track your own credits as you try to get 401 qualified. So please do take the time to download that, and it should just be in there. Let me know if you have any issues with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and proceed. If there's any questions, just raise your voice or raise your hand or whatever. And but at the end, I expect that there will be questions, and we'll set aside time to answer those. So. Okay, normally, okay, here we go. All right. Make sure yeah. All right, sorry guys. All right, so let's get you 401 qualified. Let's get you FSFPM 401 qualified. So the learning objective for today is I'm going to explain the background of the 401 series, how it relates to IFPM and FSFPM, which I'll explain both of those individually, where it's applicable to fuels management, some of the components of being 401 qualified, which I'm sure you guys have all heard people talk about, and then kind of talk about some of the pathways to get in there, which there's different pathways, and we'll talk about some of them. So those are the learning objectives. I hope that we can meet that. Disclaimer, again, this is not legal advice. I'm not an HR person. I'm not human resources. I'm certainly not an expert. Again, just some experience with success. I might add, we've had people successfully become 401 qualified. And it is, if you really get into the nitty gritty, it's a bit more complicated than I'm going to present here. But what we're going to present here is sort of like the bare minimum of what you need to know to be successful in moving through this pathway. So everything that's presented here is what you do need to know and should be enough to get you through it. All right, so let's start with just some sort of background definitional stuff. What is the 401 series? The 401 series is called, the full title is General Natural Resources Management and Biological Sciences. That's his full name. Some people just call it General Biological Sciences. You see other folks in the 401 series in the Forest Service and other land management agencies like biologists, archaeologists, the natural resources folks. And it was applied to fuels positions a long time ago to kind of show parity with those other professional positions, because we want fuels to be a professional, like it is a profession sort of unto itself. It's part of fire and aviation management. I think the intent was to kind of show that it has some parity with those other natural resource specialist positions, and that the emphasis for that is even carried over into our standard fuels organization, where we wanted to bring those district fuels planners to that 11 level, which is comparable to the natural resources specialists, the other folks in that 401 position. So there's some logic to why the 401 series was applied to fuels management. So what is it? There's other professional series in the government that have similar requirements. These are called the group standards. I have some links down here. I also have a link slide at the very end of this presentation that you guys, I'll upload this presentation when I'm done here again, of course, and it'll have all the links. But then some of the links are also in the slides. So anyway, there's lots of other 401 series professionals. If you go on the OPM website, the Office of Personnel Management, that's where they live. It's called the General Schedule Qualification Standards. There's actually 5 different groups. 2 of the groups are used in our wildland firefighting, our fire and aviation management groups. There's the technical and medical, which is what the 462 series currently resides under. I have no idea what the 456, the new firefighter series, is going to go under. I actually didn't even look to see it, but I didn't see it under that technical medical one. But we, the 401 series are under the professional and scientific positions is what that subsection is. And so because it's a professional and scientific position, it has some additional components to it that are required. You will take well solace to know that if you are a 401, you're in good standing along with ceramic engineers and nuclear engineers and folks like that, material engineers. So yeah, pharmacology and ecology. There you go. Shout out ecology. So it nests inside this whole sort of sciencey professional realm within the government as a whole. Those are all those professional and scientific series. And there's actually more below there. I just cut off the slide. So that's where 401 lives. As a as a component of being 401 qualified, and this is again from that previous general qualifications thing. It has 2 components, actually kind of 3 if you want to look at it. One is a degree or a combination of education and experience. Now, there are some jobs you get with the government that actually just require a full degree, but the 401 is kind of different because you can have a degree or this combination of education and experience, which is what allows us to have people in fuels who may not have a full degree, but do have that education and experience equivalence. Over here on the right is some additional language. You can see that's where the 24 hours, that's where the 24 hours thing that we're going to talk about, and you probably already know, that's where it comes from. It's in that language. So it says basically you either have a 4-year college degree or you get these 24 hours. Education is the core to this professional and scientific series, which kind of makes sense if you look at where it's nested. But it can either be, again, it can either be a degree or these 24 hours or experience, which I'm going to emphasize. And the link for this is below. All right, so set that aside for a minute. Now let's talk about what is IFPM or FS-FPM. It's not the same as 401. So you got to look at these as 2 components, 2 different things. So IFPM is an interagency, it's called the Interagency Fire Program Management. It's existed since like 2000. The definition is it's a collaborative effort between Forest Service and DOI agencies to establish minimum qualification standards for key positions. So that's the definition if you actually go on the website and look at it. It goes way back. It's been around my entire career. Actually comes from all the stuff that fell out from South Canyon, and even was talked about during the 1995 wildland fire policy, which is still our policy as amended. And then IFPM was actually issued in 2000 by Interagency Committee. So it's existed for damn near 25 years now. But in 2007, the Forest Service broke from IFPM and created what's called FSFPM, so Forest Service Fire Program Management, which is as everything with Forest Service, because of course it made it harder than the base IFPM. So you can't really just look at the IFPM requirements. You have to actually look at the Forest Service, the FSFPM requirements for those of you that work for the Forest, which should be, I think that everyone here is a Forest Service employee. But do understand that there are some differences. This is a table from the FSFPM document where it shows on the left side the original IFPM categories. And this is just a snippet. There's a bunch of these. But for our purposes, prescribed fire and fuel specialist, that's how IFPM categorizes it. Forest Service positions in IFPM is identified as a forest fuel specialist, but then FSFPM divides the prescribed fire and fuels out into a district and zone fuel specialist, district fuels AFMOs, and district fuels technicians. So it actually subdivides it, which I think is good. And what that allows it to do is have different levels of qualifications and requirements for each one of those 3 positions, those 3 levels of positions. And there's actually more too. Okay, again, there's these things called MQS, which is the minimum qualification standards. This is what you need to be FSFPM qualified or IFPM qualified. There's experience, there's operational qualifications and training, and then for some, there's an educational component. Fuels are the only one in IFPM. I'm just going to say IFPM for shorthand, but you guys know what I'm saying. It's FSFPM. Fuels are the only ones with an education component because of that 401 series. And so the components of IFPM are the basic requirements for any 455, 462, or 401 position. And then there's the specialized requirements. Then there's the qualifications. And then there's this other thing that nobody ever talks about, which is this additional required training. All that additional required training is always already embedded into the qualifications for the most part. And it never really factors into getting, IFPM qualified necessarily. Although I should back up and say, like some people, I know if they want to get higher level, like chief officer level positions, what is it, M581, I think is the course. Some people bump against that. It's kind of hard to get sometimes. That's in that additional required training where you actually have to have that because of IFPM to become, like whatever, GS9 or GS11 duty officer, FMO type position. Okay, so that is that. This is the crosswalk document that is a FSFPM specific document. You can see at the top I've circled that. What I did here is I highlighted in yellow. I don't know if you can see my arrow or not here, but I highlighted in yellow the PDs, which is these FA 0934, FCO 867. Those are position descriptions or PDs. Those are the ones that were chosen in the Phase 1 Region 5 Standard Fuels Organization implementation plan. So when we did the Standard Fuels Organization last year, and we started hiring to that, there was a memo that came out, and I think it's in the zip file, of an implementation plan. And in that implementation plan, which I'll show you in a second, it actually lists which PDs are a part of it. And you can actually see what the minimum NWCG qualifications are and all that. So the senior fuels tech, so this is cool, the new GS8 fuels tech, the 1CF003 PD, that's the GS8. It's a straight 8. That's why we talk often about it'd be really nice if it was step 7, 8. For whatever reason, that PD is not stepped. It's just a straight 8. But there is still district fuels tech positions, which we're also hiring in additional phases. That is the 6-7, so there's that pathway. The fuels AFMO, this is the one they chose. And then what's interesting is that in the implementation plan, I know we're hiring some I think we're hiring some district fuels planners. What's listed in FSFPM is this FS5424 PD, but what we chose in the proposal was actually the FS4493 PD. Yada, 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 it doesn't matter, just interesting to see. And then for the GS1112, again, highlighted here, those the PDs that we chose as a region to use. So again, these all have IFPM requirements. You can see that actually, I'm gonna go back to the previous slide. It's 462 until you get to that district fuels planner. So the 8s, the senior fuels techs and the fuels FMOs, these are 462, so they're actually not 401 positions. It's not until you get to this GS11 or the forest fuels officer that you run into the 401 qualification. Just FYI. Okay, everybody with me? I'm gonna take silence as a yes. All right, copy. So this is the letter, Region 5 Standard Fuels Organization Implementation Plan. This is the direction that we received. So these are the positions that we could hire, and these are the PDs that the workforce development was, the hiring team was directed to hire at. Just FYI, in case you didn't know. So and when we do phase 2, hopefully next, there should be some additional positions in there with additional direction. All right, so let's. I know that was a lot, but I think this stuff is important to know just to kind of understand the full background of this 401 and IFPM. So let's combine it. So let's say you want to be fully 401 and IFPM qualified. So the experience and qualification and training, you're kind of on your own for that. That's not really something that we can help out a whole lot with. Sort of, obviously, we can help get you training assignments if you're really looking for one. But there's a lot that already goes into that, and there's an infrastructure for that, like getting on the regional priority training list or your local forest priority training list. You just kind of got to take care of that part on your own, as well as getting those fuels positions if you want to look at a career ladder. Remember, 401 does not mean you need a bachelor's degree. You just need 424 applicable credits. So where can you get those credits? Well, you've probably already started and you don't even know, although you might have hurt yourself in the past. So you remember taking all those like 300-400 level classes where you needed to fill out the Scantron form to get college credit. I know that some people did that and some people didn't. Hopefully you did, because if you did, that means that you should have that course on a college transcript. And yeah, hopefully you didn't just blow that off and ignore it, because if not, you're going to have to go back, because if you did, you're going to have to go back and make up those credits somehow. I'll go into some more depth on that in a minute, but just as a little preview, NWCG classes should be able to count towards those credits. All right, so why would you want to be 401? I think that's a good question, because you certainly don't have to do that. But if you do want to go in the fuels direction, if you want to advance anywhere past the GS9, which hopefully is something you would want to do, it looks like you're going to run into that 401. There was some direction actually issued in 2011. Chief Tidwell at the time put this letter out, and the memo basically said anybody that's in this GS11 or above positions need to get with the program and be converted into a 401 position. I myself, on the Cleveland, when I was there, I got there in 2010, and like a year or two later, because of this, I was transferred from a 462 to a 401 position. I happened to meet it already, so it wasn't an issue, but other people, it was a little bit more of an issue. And so this is a direction from this 301 conversion fact. So one of the things they did is they took a lot of the positions that, like the forest fire chief or deputy fire chief. Originally, those were 401 positions also, but what they recognized, which we recognize a lot in fuels, is that it's really hard to become 401 qualified, and some of these people would just probably wasn't going to happen for. So they created this 301. Well, they didn't create it, but they utilized this 301 instead and moved those positions in there. But the Tidwell letter and the direction retained those fuels position of 401, because again, they wanted that parity with natural resource positions, and because fuels is a vegetation management position. One of the things they recognize in this letter over here that I highlighted is that they kind of identify that really, if you're a 462, 345, GS 345, and you want to go into a 401 series, once you get to about that GS5 level, that's when you kind of need to decide what you want to be when you grow up. This isn't entirely true, and we're trying to fix this now, but what they recognize is that it can be kind of a glass ceiling if you get to be like a GS9 or GS11, 301 or 462. It's really hard to transfer over to the 401. And this is the most important part. Previously, the experience that you gained in those positions would count towards the experience in fuels, but what this clarification did is it said, no, it doesn't count anymore. So basically, even if you were like a GS11, 462, you'd have to go back and to like a 9 position or a 7 position and work your way back up the fuels ladder. So anyway, that's why they did that. The fuels, and again, if you want to, it's not just like a district fuels planner or the forest fuels officer. There's I think all the regional positions that we're in are 401, I think, or professional series. There's the standard fuels organization positions at the 11 and above level that we are looking to expand to, those district fuels planner positions. Hopefully there'll be a lot more of them. There's zone positions, there's enterprise positions. DOI used to have a lot of 401, but the rumor is that they are having 401 go away. I haven't seen that in writing, but that is the rumor, is that DOI will be making 401 go away. I haven't heard that the Forest Service is going to do it. In fact, I've heard the opposite. I've heard that the 401 is going to stay even after the 456 conversion happens. So fuels people are going to stay 401 is the last I heard. And so that's sort of the premise of this whole conversation we're having, is that it's still going to be a thing in the future. Okay. Take a minute. So pathways to achieving it. So let's say you actually do want to become 401 qualified. If you're not, assuming, and this assumes that you have that back end experience and qualifications. Again, you're going to have to kind of get that stuff on your own. We can help a little bit, but it's mostly up to you. It's the 401 part that we can help with, which is the education. So the first thing you need to do if you want to get 401 qualified, and again, this is again, I'm speaking from my experience, get your supervisor support, because it's going to have an impact to your own work. Get support as wide as possible. Make it known that you want to be 401. Get the forest supervisor to agree to it. Get the forest fire chief. Like, let people know that you want to go into fuels. This is a career pathway. And frankly, there's not too many people that want to do it. So if it's something that you do want to do, hopefully they will have that support. It helps a lot to get it on your IDP. Helps to get it on SF 182, which is an AGLR, and I'll talk about that a little bit. There's this other thing called an educational work variance, which is actually It's a federal law that requires all agencies to have a program. And what an educational work variance is basically an informal agreement with your supervisors that allows you to use O1 time to whatever degree you agree to work on your education, work on your 401 qualifications. So it might be 5 hours a week, 10 hours a pay period, something like that, that allows you to have those work burden relieved a little bit for you to focus on school. Of course, there needs to be the money. If you go to school, that costs money. You're going to have the funding from somewhere, whether it's the base program or work or whatever, to cover the coursework, the tuition, and the materials, because oftentimes there's books and things like that. And yes, a lot of people want to know the government well supports this kind of thing. This is a link, and one of the documents in the zip file is an OPM. It's like flexible guidance, something or other. Can't remember what the title is, but what it is it's an OPM document that shows all of the programs to support people's education and stuff. And I looked up the Code of Federal Regulations on this years ago just to see it. It's the example I always give is that just remember the military will send people to freaking medical school and make them into a medical doctor or a dentist or something like that. There is a well-founded history in the federal government to provide education, training, and even degrees, even advanced degrees, graduate degrees for people, as long as they continue to work for the government for a time period. So yeah, it's a no-brainer. It's okay to spend program dollars on this. There's a long history of it. Okay, so again, assuming you have that experience, you need the 24 hours of relevant upper level courses. Just a little windiness here through the policy. So in 2019, OPM actually did an opinion. They put out some direction that kind of clarified the use of the 401 series. The DOI jumped all over it, and there's a lot of DOI specific documents about this. I have not, however, found a lot of Forest Service documents about this, so I'm not entirely sure where they stand specifically with the NWCG courses and semester hours translation. In other words, what of those NWCG courses that are on a transcript can you count towards your 24 hours? I actually talked to an HR staffer that I knew that does 401, I don't know, certifications or whatever. She said she was working with a draft 2019 document that did not show NWCG courses, and she thinks that NWCG courses don't count. However, I found, yeah, exactly, it depends on who your person is, that's the point. So I found on the IFPM website, nestled in there, it's called 2019 Qualification Standard Interpretation Document. That's also in the in the zip file. And that document does not, a lot of the other documents say that this is DOI specific. This one does not. It just indicates that it's all IFPM, and it's also different than a 2005 version. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but the point being is that I think that the staffer that I talked to is actually using an old document, and I think that there's newer direction that does include the NWCG courses. That is my opinion. I think that they do count, and people that I've helped do 401 recently have used NWCG courses to count towards that since 2019. So I think we're good to go there. And I provide that documentation for you as well, too. But I don't know for sure, but there was 2005 guidance. I've given a lot of people this document, which shows the NWCG courses, which are creditable. I'm going to show you these again in a second. The draft 2019 guidance doesn't, but the 2019 policy interp does. So anyway, yeah, I guess I just said all of this, but the staffer isn't sure, but leans towards college only. I don't think so. So NWCG credited courses. This is directly from the 2019 policy interpretation document that I just talked about. It says other NWCG courses, and it says not listed in the table below, might be used to meet the basic requirement, which indicates that there might even be other NWCG courses that aren't even listed here, which I'm going to show you, that you can apply towards your 401. So this is from the new 2019 document. It shows a list of courses, so like RX 450, RX 540, RX 590, 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 hour, so if you've taken S490, you should have 1 hour. So you only need 23. If you happen to be an FBAN and, have taken 590, that's 2. You only need 22 more. And this is the other part of the page. This is actually a shorter list than the 2005 documentation, which has some additional courses, but 491, 492, if you've taken S520, RX300, which didn't exist, but now exists again. So that's nice. And then Introduction to Fire Effects, which says RX 340 here, but I always thought that was RX 310. So go figure. Even taken S190, 290. Is there anybody on this class right now that hasn't taken S90, 190, 290? You probably have taken that and even 390. So all of which is to say these should count towards your 24 hours. So don't sleep on these. Make sure you count these when you're trying to figure out how many more you need to get. Okay. So finding your transcripts. So going back to said originally, a lot of us have taken these NWCG courses at American River, Crafton Hills, Allen Hancock, whatever. I'm sure there's others. Actually, it might be good for other people to put in the chat other community colleges that have been associated with NWCG courses. You can do a couple things. One, you can go directly to that college, to the registrar's office and try to look yourself up. Hey, Grasmick, are you on here? This is where I got some information from you. You want to jump in if you're on here?
What's up, Steven? I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy. If you could help talk about this next part.
The searching
paid
for
service?
transcripts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
using the services.
Yeah, so Steven was going to provide the links that I shared with him, but there's a couple. You can do a Google search and just put like finding your college transcripts. And there's a couple, I think Clearinghouse is one where if you have the date range of when you went to said colleges, you can put that in and it'll search and it'll say, yes, we found a transcript for you. And then you can kind of go view it and see what classes you were taken at those colleges. And then you can request the transcript to be emailed to you or mailed to you. Sometimes they were free, sometimes they weren't, depending on how long it was, but it usually ran from $3 to $5 a transcript, and then they would get mailed to your residence. And then you'd have copies of them. And you just scanned them and then put them into the system. Does that help explain it, Stephen?
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate that. It seemed like a good deal, and I know that worked out pretty well for you. I did provide the link here. It's called Parchment now. It used to be called something else, right?
Yeah.
But it's called Parchment. That's the only service that I found that seems to be pretty legitimate, and it also apparently stores your transcripts for you afterwards. So seems like it might be worth it. Yeah, thanks, Scott. Appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about going back to college. If you do find yourself, or maybe you've been able to scrape together 10 NWCG courses, maybe get 10 credits of that, 10 or 12 courses, and you need the other, whatever, however many that is, 12 more to meet your 24-hour. There are a lot of options. There's a document in the zip file that is called like 401 course options or whatever. There's a lot of universities that offer 401 type courses. Some specifically offer 401 pathways. This is my opinion. I don't think it's necessary to do the whole like 401 2-year 401 program, because most people can at least carve off some of the credits from NWCG courses. And I also think it's unnecessarily rigid and unnecessarily expensive to do an entire 401 program. That being said, if you got the support for it and you got the time for it, cool. I'm sure it'll help you in your fields career. But you don't necessarily need to you just need to a la carte the classes. So if you do go to a la carte classes, say you go to University of Idaho, my alma mater, go Vandals, or OSU, or Montana has one. I think NAU has some, Northern Arizona. There's a lot of different options to this, which we'll talk about in a minute. What you want to do is when you go to register for courses, you want to choose what's called the non-degree seeking pathway. A lot of times you can go to a college and just choose to take a course, especially an online course, as a non-degree seeking student. The only downside is that when you do that, if say there's 100 slots for the course, or 100 students can fit in the course, if degree seeking students fill up that course, you'll get bumped. But I haven't run across that too much. I haven't talked to too many people that actually got bumped on courses, and if you do, just choose another one. But and when you go to do a non-degree seeking student, you just take classes. And then the cool thing is, it shows up on a transcript. I mean, they follow it. You are a student there and all that sort of thing, but you're not like, I'm not trying to get a degree. For the record, if you ever wanted to then pivot that to a degree, you certainly can, but you don't have to. Point being, you can go just take classes on an a la carte basis. Yeah, like I said, we include some of those. Let's see, like OSU for sure. University of Idaho makes it really easy. I like that one, especially because online courses, they charge in-state tuition no matter where you live. So it's actually pretty cheap, and maybe a few $100 per course. Maybe like, I don't know, $300 per credit hour. It's pretty cheap actually, certainly compared to like out-of-state tuition places and other places. So that helps if there's not a lot of money in the budget to be thrifty and economical with that. And they're all online courses, and a lot of them are pretty good courses as well too. And you can take like bioecology courses, you can take general ecology courses, biology courses. Nice thing about like OSU and Montana and University of Idaho is they have like fuels courses, like fuels mensuration, and I don't know. I'm sure there's people in this course in the fuel school right now that have taken that. So if they want to jump in the chat and explain their experience or good courses they've taken, please do that. But it's nice that they're really aiming it at people like us that need those courses. Just so you know, this is from the documentation. These are the course headings that they look at. So you want to take ENVS, which is environmental sciences, soil classes, forestry, go forestry, wildlife courses, geography, but you don't want to take like political science, sociology, history. Those are cool. I love history as much as the next person, but those will not count towards 401. It has to be within the Forest Service. We're looking for stuff that's specific to natural resource management. So just make sure that your course headings are appropriate, and you're really looking for those 300 plus level courses. Sometimes there'll be prerequisites, but even sometimes with prerequisites, you can ask the instructor to just get into it. Say there's like a forestry 300, but prerequisite is forestry 200. Sometimes you can just override that, and mostly because of your experience. So if you ever have any questions with that, get a hold of me or somebody else. All right, so another thing is it helps a lot to put it on a SF-182. If you've never done the SF-182, it's on AgLearn. I'm blanking on what the title of this document is, but it's actually used to have to do these a lot for training courses. It's basically a long, kind of complicated document. It's not too bad once you get used to it, and it's for training, especially good for education-based training. And depending on the cost, there's this thing called miscellaneous obligations. So if it's above your purchase limit, for some reason you're taking maybe a bunch of classes or something all at once, it might actually be more than your purchase card limit. You can actually have ASC pay it through what's called the miscellaneous obligations process. It's a little bit tricky to learn it at first, but it's not too bad. And then they'll actually pay the tuition costs, but it have to have assigned SF-182 to. Usually comes with a continuing service agreement, which is just, you guys, those of you that went through the apprenticeship program, probably familiar with that. That's just an agreement. I think it's like 1 day of service per, like, I don't know, hour of contact time. Basically, if you take a semester long class, you got to work for the government for, like, I think it equates to like a couple months, something like that, depending on the course. It's not too bad. It's not obviously enforced very much, but it is a thing, and it's part of that OPM guidance as well. And taking classes is good for you. So, it's a good thing. If this is something that you can do and you want to work in fuels, taking a fuels course would be pretty bomber, right? All right, wrapping up here. So putting it all together, those of you that know me know I like a good flow chart just to visualize things. So I tried to create a flow chart for how to get 401 IFPM qualified. So you start on the left, you want a 401 series job. If you're in green is kind of like, yes, supervisor supports it, you got money to pay for it, and you got the time to do it, awesome. Those are the prerequisites. If you don't, you may have to do it solo. You may have to just do it on your own time, on your own dime, or move to a different job. God knows there's plenty of places you can get a different job these days in the Forest Service. Go somewhere that might support it, might support you in doing these things that you want to do to advance your career. So yes, you have those if you meet the NWCG qualifications, say you're an IC4, fire and boss, whatever. If you don't, make a plan to get on the priority training list or get the training that you need, get your quals up, that sort of thing. While you're doing that, see if you meet the time and grade experiences or the experience requirements, which is a part of it. If you don't, you might need to go back and get a fuels job. But if you do continue along that, check to see if you have a bachelor's degree that's relevant. If you have a bachelor's degree, you are good. You're 401 qualified. Congratulations. A bachelor's degree in like forestry or geography or environmental sciences or that sort of thing. Or if you have 24 hours of applicable semester hours, for some reason you've scratched together over the course of your career, congratulations, you're 401 qualified. Go get a fuels job. However, if you don't, calculate how many NWCG hours you have, going back to what I had talked about previously, where I've taken RX310, I've taken S490, I've taken this. Okay, so I got 6 or 8 hours that are credible. How many more do I need? There's an Excel spreadsheet in there that you can use to kind of help track that. From there, make a plan to attend college courses. Find some courses at University of Idaho or Oregon or whatever, or even locally. There might be some locally to do that. Make a plan to, and this is another thing, like you can also have the government pay for you to go to some of those courses. You could probably go to some of the, advanced fire effects or S490, some of the ones that maybe you'd kind of avoided in the past where you can get a free semester hour there and not have to take a college course. And the government will pay you to do it. All of which is to get to a solid 24 hours on a transcript. Again, it has to be on a transcript. That will get you to be 401 qualified. Go get a fuels job. So that's the flow chart. In conclusion, it's not easy. It's not straightforward, but it can be done. People have done it, and so can you for sure. I don't know what the future is going to be with the new firefighter series, but again, I've heard that it's going to stay. If it doesn't, then this all goes away and no issues. We in the fuel shop have talked about a couple different things. We really want to do this. I'm going to start moving out on this probably next year. Maybe looking at retaining some funding at the region if we can to develop some kind of like scholarship program where maybe people apply because they're up and comers in fuels or fuels tech now, and they're like, hey, I want to stay in fuels. Those are the people that we want to support. Also looking at maybe Robin has talked about maybe finding some ways, and I actually just found guidance. I found OPM guidance that supports this, by the way, where you can actually dump, like, let's say University of Idaho, go Vandals. We give them like $50,000, and they will actually just hold that money in a like, I don't know, an escrow account or whatever. And then people that I guess somehow we figure out that they're with us and they should charge against that. I don't know. I'm sure there's a mechanism that we can figure out, but I'm hoping to do that because that way we can just have the money at the university and then people could just sign up for the courses. And then all you have to worry about at that point is getting supervisor approval and having the time to do it and that sort of thing. Right? Makes sense. So those are things that we're looking at doing. I think that's the next step. Again, there's zip file resources. Look at that if there's any questions. And I think that is it. If you want to do this and you want to follow up with us, we do have our office hours. This is an old slide, but I'm recycling it. We have our fuels office hours Tuesdays, 12 to 3 or 1:30 on Teams. And so I think this could be a good opportunity if, say, you want to embark on this process, just come and check in with us. And we can give you some of those nitty gritty detail stuff and help you along the way. And here's your fuels crew here, your regional fuels crew. And yeah, I think that's it. This is a link slide. This has all these are actually links to the OPM 401 site, the group standards, yada yada, supplemental standards and such. So that'll be included in the materials. I'll upload this when I'm done. I think that's it. How long did we go? Sorry for this one's a little bit longer than previous fuel schools, but I wanted to explain all this stuff. So everybody still here? Okay, I'm gonna take a breath. That's a negative. I haven't monitored the chat at all. Are there any questions or anything? Looks like we got a hand raised, so let's just start with that. Brian, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, 40 minutes into it. Sorry, this was a long one, guys. I really apologize.
Hey, can you hear me or not? All right.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Hey, I wanted to just add a little comment. I just graduated last month from the National Fuels Academy. So I am graduate cohort 1, the only person in region 5 to ever go through it. And I've had a lot of questions. Does that program help you attain 401 classification? And the official answer is no, it does not. When we started that academy, 3-4 years ago, we actually had students drop out because they were assuming that was going to help them bridge that gap. And once they found out that it did not, they chose to seek other avenues for 401 classification.
Yeah, well, good on you for sticking through it. That was a question that we had initially, and I know a lot of people had, so that's a bummer. Do you think that?
Yeah, the official answer we got from Frankie Romero pretty much day one was that the agency provides training, not education.
Yeah, no offense, but I completely disagree with that. So, I think there's people at the WO that would be reticent to say, yeah, we're going to send, everybody in the Forest Service that wants to go get a bachelor's degree. But, this is why this is very specifically why I'm like, you don't need to go back for a degree. You don't even need to go back for the whole 401 program. Just like for a few $1,000 per person who has a clear interest in a fuels career, which, is pretty evident. Thanks, Ben. Whatever, I'll stand by that. I don't care.